Oh. Hari Om, and greetings from Portland. 7 months ago, I facilitated a workshop for myself, our Cleveland Seekers, for everyone. This workshop was entitled Our Shastra on Our Environment. It was exactly 7 months ago. At the end of February, we had begun. And in this workshop, I had read out, I had explained a very special verse, a teaching from Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm going to reread that, to re-explain that. This is 10:22:33. Here's where you pretend to write that like you actually know what I'm talking about and like you're actually going to re-reference that. Aho esham varam janma sarva pranyupajivanam sujanas yeva yesham vai vimukha yanti narthinaha. Shri Krishna shares with all of his friends that are around him. I'm going to go through each word. Aho. What's the English definition for aho? Aho. Esham varam janma. Look at these best birds, these best embodiments. Why are they the best? Sarva prani upajivanam. All beings depend on them. All beings depend on them. Sujanasyeva yesham vai. Just like when it comes to a noble person, vimukha yanti narthinaha. When you go to a noble person in need of this or that, you never leave disappointed. What being is Bhagavan Krishna referring to? Trees. He is describing trees as having the greatest birth because every being depends on trees. What a lovely insight. And what this shows is how connected the divine is to our environment. The word Shastra comes from the word Shasana. Shasana means to be disciplined, to direct. And this is what we do in our Prthvi Sevasanga. Instead of living in an ordinary way that's not in tune with the environment, to practice discipline, to be in tune with the environment. In 2019, our community released life lessons. Many of you who teach high school classes, you've been using this. On the cover of Life Lessons, what is shared? By youth, for youth. This was compiled by younger people, and it's for high school students. This summer, we released our Prthvi Seva Guide. We did this in July. In August, our 8th workshop of the year was oriented towards our Prthvi Seva Guide. And on the front of this, we don't have a by for, but if we did, what would that by for be? It would be by all who are compassionate. Our Prthvi Seva Guide has been put together by those who are compassionate, those who have a passion for others. This is the by. And who would the for be for? For all. Who is the environment not for? The environment is for all. What we did in our last workshop, what we're doing in every workshop, and specifically what we've started to do before our workshops, we're describing this as work time. It is a time for individuals, for communities to create synergy in using our Prthvi Seva Guide. How many of you are implementing practices from the Prthvi Seva Guide? By show of hands. Everyone who has their hand up, wonderful, do more. Everyone who doesn't have their hand up, how dare you? Everyone who doesn't have their hand up, definitely do more. This evening, as we facilitate our 9th workshop, our seeker who will speak will introduce himself, but I just want to share one facet about him. Earlier, I used the word compassionate. His wife, who wasn't feeling so well, needed a kidney transplant. And through divine will, his kidney was compatible with hers. And he donated his kidney to his wife so that she can survive. And I was recently with them twice in the past months. And she and he and their whole family, they're not just surviving, they're thriving. So he's not going to tell you about that. That's why I'm telling you about that. And now our seeker speaker will continue.
Thank you, Vivekji. Pranam. And pranam to my fellow seekers as well as the organizing team for this workshop today. Hopefully you can see my screen. All right, awesome. Yeah, so Vivekji is a big inspiration. You know, he's continuing to transform our lives on a daily basis, and we owe a lot to him, a lot. But that apart, this topic really of sustainable and regenerative spaces, it's very dear to my heart. Because if you think about it, you know, we are humans and we inhabit spaces, right? We live and play indoors all the time with our families, with everyone. So what happens in our spaces is reflective of not just ourselves, but is also reflective of how we treat Mother Earth, how we treat nature in itself. So hopefully in today's few minutes that we spent together, I'm able to connect for you the regenerative nature of spaces when you invoke nature, when you serve Mother Earth, and when you put people at the center of it all. So before we get started, right, I want to give you a little bit of a background about myself. So my family is from Kashmir, that's why the mountains. And I grew up in Mumbai, actually. So, and that's the sewage, you know, in one of the Mumbai areas, right, where I kind of grew up. I did. This image is from the web, so it doesn't matter. But the point here is that what does nature do, right? The mountains, it really supports life. That's where life begins. our gods live there, right? And I'm sure all of you come from backgrounds that are similar, right? Your families have descended from these amazing, amazing places that were in tune with nature, right? And where I ended up was in Mumbai, which is great, by the way, right? Like that's evolution, that's growth. But what I saw there was, as I would walk every day to school, 2 miles back and forth, I would cross this 100-foot wide channel. It was a stormwater channel, designed to convey stormwater to the creek. And there were mangroves in the creek. But what I would see every day was really different colored water, right? And I was in 4th grade. So I asked my dad, what is this colored water? And the color of the water changes every day. And he told me essentially there were these chemical plants upstream that were dumping this water, right? So what an evolution for me, right? My family came from the mountains, and here I am, watching the sewage being dumped into the ocean on a daily basis. So my focus was, how can we do this right? When I went to college, I trained to be an environmental engineer, and I was super excited, right? My first project was go clean up this contaminated land. Erie Canal, actually, it was in Buffalo. And I was excited that I'm going to clean this up and we are going to build a new building, so on and so forth. But very soon it dawned on me that we were trying to remediate harm that we had already done, right, to Mother Earth. And this remediation would take 30, 40 years, maybe even our lifetimes to get remediated. And that's not the way we want to live. So essentially, I changed my course. I changed my, company's vision in terms of what we did. And what we did was we tried to proactively link ourselves to businesses that were seeking growth, but were also looking to reduce their negative impact on the environment, right? How can we just remediate proactively instead of reactively? So that's been the journey I've been on for the last 20 years. I'm really, really fortunate that I get to do this on a daily basis. And I'm thankful for it every day. Trying to advance my slide here. Yeah, so let's look at nature first, right? So nature's role is really, threefold, right? It is the cradle of creation. All would agree, right? It's where the habitat is created. Your pollination occurs here, so we get food to eat, regulation of air quality, regulation of climate, regulation of ocean acidification, how much fresh water we get, for the next 100, 200, 500 years. All of this happens automatically in nature. We don't do anything to it, right? You think of a cherry tree, right? Vivekji had the example of a tree. A cherry tree, if you look from the outside, creates these thousands of blooms, thousands and thousands of blooms. And more than 90% of those go waste. And I used to think that, we only get like a couple of blooms, become fruit or bring another offspring up. What about the thousands of blooms that died away or withered away? Well, that's not the case. Ants and other organisms, eat those blooms up. They create manure. So my point here is that nature has a way to not create waste, right? Humans do create waste. So how can we, take nature as an example and really enrich our lives on a daily basis? The other aspect that nature provides to us is it energizes us, right? It supports life on planet. In simple terms, it provides biomass, right? That we use, the wood that we use to burn for energy, for cooking food, so on and so forth. And last but not the least, it also inspires us, right? It inspires us by providing a basis for social cohesion, a sense of place, a sense of purpose, belonging, and rootedness associated with the living world. So there's a reason we go out for walks, right? We go out for hikes. There's a reason for all of that. And nature provides that to us at no cost. Now coming to planet, right? And I'm taking this, from a high level of nature to planet and then at a community level. So hopefully you can make the connection. At planet level, we get clean air to breathe on a daily basis. We get abundance of land, right, where we build, where we get our food from. Really, it supports our daily life. And we get water, three most critical things for our survival. And all of us understand that, but we've also been causing a lot of damage to it. And I know you're aware of it, but we'll revisit that momentarily. So what's been happening is that we all know, or may not know, is that the global temperatures have been rising, right, in the last 100 years. And they are tied to human activity, specifically industrialization. Now you'll say 1 degree's rise over 100 years, is not a big deal. Well, it is. This is an average global rise. But when I grew up in India and I would travel to New Delhi, where my cousins lived, having one evaporative cooler in a home, in a room, was considered luxury, right, in the summer. Fast forward 25 years, the average temperatures in New Delhi have gone up 7-8 degrees centigrade. Having an air conditioner in every room is a must. People can't survive. So that is, the level of change that has happened just in half a life of mine that I've been here. So what's the big picture of all of this, right? What are the emission sources? Well, they've been classified and quantified really nicely. We can see that electricity production, food that we eat, the agriculture, all of that is, close to 50% of all the greenhouse gas emissions that occurs. But a lot of it also has to do with buildings, right? So buildings that we live, that we work and go to play in also consume a lot of energy and emit greenhouse gas emissions. 6% of it, that seems like a small number, but of all the electricity generated globally, buildings account for 37% of consumption. Think about it. That's even significantly more than like factories themselves, right? So they do have a big impact on environment. And on the right-hand side, you can see that, land, like our nature, land and oceans, they only have so much capacity to absorb all the greenhouse gas emissions that we are causing. So there's a big amount that goes into the atmosphere, and that's the whole science behind climate change, right? Think about it, we have the power to change this dynamic from a building's perspective very easily. Let's take some specific examples, right? On the left, you see it's a clean day image of Grand Canyon National Park. What do I mean by clean day? So in the 50s, when there used to be a lot of coal burning power plants, the smoke would travel across continents, and in this case, across states, and cause this haze, right? That's what you see on the image on the right-hand side. So because this was a visible contaminant, this was a visible toxic air, federal government here in the United States and even in Canada, but more specifically United States, brought EPA into effect. We passed the Clean Air Act, right? We said that this is a national treasure, our national parks are, and we can't let it die. We can't let it wither. So we created Clean Air Act to control this pollution. And what you see on the left is mostly what we get in Grand Canyon National Park today, as well as other national parks. So the point here is that, we are really good at taking care of what's visible to us, right? But there are a lot of invisible things that are in our daily lives, which we don't pay attention to. Even today, right? We have wildfires that are triggered by climate change, right? Just average increased rise of temperature in certain areas. And it's causing another kind of damage, right? It's causing another type of haze now, which is impacting communities on the West Coast, It's impacting communities in a lot of places on the earth today. And sure, we can turn on our air purifiers, for a day or two or for a week, but it's not healthy, right? People in India and in Pakistan and other countries live this on a daily basis. So we are still continuing to contribute to not just pollution, but really enabling this climate change at a faster pace than ever before. Another example of what's visible is the truth in itself. So over here we see Yamuna River in Delhi, with all the toxic foam that comes from the effluent. This is pre-pandemic on your left. So you see there's haze on the image in the background, and then there is this toxic foam in the water. And guess what happens when the country went into a lockdown for 3 weeks? The river cleaned up, at least the toxic foam part, and look at the air quality. You can see the buildings in the background so clearly. So definitely, right, our actions can have immediate results as well as long-term ones. So now we've looked at nature, right? We've looked at planet and what we've done. Let's focus on the topic for today, which is regenerative spaces, right? And why is this important? Well, humans, all of us spend 90% of our time indoors. You may not know that, but think about it. How many hours today were you at home or in a gym or your Chinmaya center, right? It's Sunday, so Bal Vihar. And we only spend 10% of time outdoors. And guess what we did? We cleaned up the outside air. Great. But we also need to take care of the indoor air quality that all of us live with and breathe every day. And what do I mean by that? So we talked about buildings and their role in climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. What happened is when we humans learned of what was the building's contribution, we went after it, single-mindedly and said that, what can we do? Well, tighten the enclosure. That means put more insulation into it, remove openings such as big windows and doors and stuff. So essentially we created these boxes, right, that would not consume too much energy, but it had some negative effects as well. So on the positive side, our goal was to reduce the carbon dioxide emission because we would consume less energy. And so thereby have a less of a negative impact on Mother Earth. But in the inside, what we were doing was actually creating more toxic environment for ourselves. And what I mean by that is you have no access to daylight. You have these spaces that are not ventilated well enough. And you are introducing all kinds of cleaning chemicals, all kinds of products that are made with chemicals that even EPA does not know what they are, right? So EPA has identified only a few hundred chemicals, whether they're toxic or not. But guess what? There are 65,000 or more chemicals in commerce today. So folks have no idea about what these chemicals do. And we have all these products and cleaning supplies and whatnot in our indoor environment without proper ventilation. So there's a lot of bad things that could happen, right? And a big one that has been documented really, really well is a sick building syndrome. So essentially, sick building syndrome comprises of various non-specific symptoms that occur in the occupants of a building. This feeling of ill health increases sickness, absenteeism, and causes a decrease in productivity of the workers. So there's a whole lot of research in this space. So you see what we did, right? We tried to save energy, but it kind of caused harm to ourselves. So now the question is, what do I do? Or where do I start? We have to look at it from two angles, right? One is the planetary health. So what's in my food? We ask that question a lot, right? You want to know the ingredients in your food. We need to start asking the same question for anything we buy for our homes, for our centers. What is it made up of? I was just having a conversation before this call where we were talking about compostable cutlery for our Bal Vihar centers, right? Make sure that it is indeed compostable, that it's not made of another chemical that's going to harm somebody else in the value chain, right? So ask those questions. Look at ways to use renewable energy and renewable water systems in your spaces, whether it's home, whether it's the Bal Vihar center or your workplace. Renewable energy is cheaper than we think. 7-8 years ago, that used to be very expensive. Now it is even with what we pay, on a daily basis for electricity consumption. So look at those avenues. Try to think big in terms of what you can do at your center or even at your home. Think about durability, right? Anytime you buy something, is that going to last me a long time, right? We just built a whole new Chinmaya center here in Pittsburgh, and we chose flooring that was made sustainably, but more importantly, it would last at least 25, 30 years, and it could be recycled at end of life. So that is the kind of thinking we need to bring, right? We can't be renovating spaces every 6 years, which is what happens in office spaces. Every 6 years, office spaces get renovated on average. Think holistically in terms of systems, right? What are your actions going to have an outcome? Where in the value chain? On the left, I show a lot of images. Those are all certifications for products. So you can look them up. You can also look at the product ingredients. And if they have any of these certifications, that helps. But more importantly, on the human health side, right? There are some very, very simple measures that we can take. We don't have to retrofit anything or spend any big amounts of money. Increasing ventilation, right? What happened in COVID is very clear. We see it on our news channels. The mantra there is increase the ventilation rate of buildings, and we won't have the COVID in the air just staying inside, right? It will always be diluted with the fresh air coming from outside. Do that for your homes, for your workplace. Improve the air quality. Don't get chemicals that are not needed, cleaners, anything of that nature. Anything that has a smell is actually a chemical, right? So whether it's a fresh car smell or any smell is a chemical that's essentially a volatile organic compound. Think about thermal health, right? So is there enough insulation in our older centers, in our older homes? That is what is causing the energy usage to go up, to spike up. It's not too expensive to replace or include new sources of thermal insulation. And guess what? It also provides us with thermal comfort. The newer buildings feel more comfortable because they have the right amount, actually more than needed amount of insulation in them. Think about moisture, water quality, right? Noise. These are all issues that affect our daily lives and we don't even realize. And last but not the least, lighting and views, right? If you have a big blind or an old curtain or whatever that might be, window covering in your home, in your office, open it up. There are studies from Harvard School of Public Health in the last couple of years that document, increased productivity, increased, oxygen levels in blood flow and whatnot of just having that view to the outside. It could be just a tree, it could be anything, but get that view. So what is the premise of regeneration? Regeneration is really, if you look at this chart, on the left, we have all the negative environmental impacts. And this is related to buildings, right? And you can see specifically, if you build to code, you're still creating a lot of negative impact because essentially you are consuming a lot of energy. Green buildings, go a step up. High performance buildings further, so on and so forth. But really, the idea of regeneration is creating more than we consume, right? That's what we learn at Bal Vihar. That's the whole mantra of Chinmaya mission. So if we have that mindset, I think anything is possible. And that's where, Vivek ji's helped me tremendously in terms of changing my thinking, not just from a material perspective, like the buildings and spaces we live, but our life, right? It has made a big difference. Let's put it that way. So what can be done? Well, there are examples already. What you see here is on the left is the Bullitt Center in Seattle, Washington. it's a building which that roof that you see on its top is actually the solar field that you see down here at the bottom. So this building is producing more electricity than it consumes. It's producing more water than it consumes. It is not just sustainable, it's regenerative. The products that they have used on the interiors are almost not emitting any chemicals at all. So very natural woods and products of that nature. But more importantly, what is really heartening for me to hear is that the building doesn't need any renovations for at least 70 years. So the way it's designed, the interiors, if the tenant is moving out, they can bring their furniture or they can move their furniture out. And then when somebody new comes in, they can bring their furniture in. You don't need to change any wall colors or any flooring or anything of that nature. So for 70 years, you are not causing any harm. And then there are several other examples of, these are called living buildings, essentially. And right here in Pittsburgh, where I am from, we have the fifth living building, which is essentially, you can see on the roof, there's solar panel, again, creating more energy than it consumes. There's a garden on the top as well. So it conserves water and collects rainwater. And there's all of this wetland that's created for that purpose. But essentially, these buildings create more of what nature gives us and don't have any effluence on the back end. Talking about interiors, right? So when you think about hospitals, try to think about, what is your idea of a hospital that you visited? For me, it's cramped spaces, no windows, poor lighting. That's what comes to mind, right? But look at these spaces that are being created. On your top left here is a new facility for Kaiser Permanente, and it's a LEED platinum building. But what basically you see the features is what we call active design, right? So you see the staircase. It's right there. It's visible for visitors, and it has this view of outside. So people are invited to take the stairs instead of taking the elevators. And then there are a whole lot of other green design features to complement that. Over here, you see the same hospital building, another hospital building, I'm sorry, actually. Look at the interiors, right? They look like a really upscale hotel, made of materials that are going to last a long time, are not introducing new chemicals into the indoor environment. This space here, all the skylight, it's a hospital, but it's bringing so much natural light to the atrium. Changes the whole patient experience. We lived in Cleveland for a little bit, and Cleveland Clinic has focused so much on patient experience. It's amazing how they take care of patients. And one of the aspects is how they design their buildings and the views patients have. It is just a phenomenal concept indeed. So I just have a table here, and I'll be happy to share this slide deck with the team later on. But there are three big green building standards, essentially. And they all focus on, from air quality within the building to energy consumption, HVAC consumption, how the building is constructed, what raw materials are used to construct the building, how the waste is managed, how the site where it's located, what does it do, how cleaning is incorporated, right? So that we are not introducing harmful chemicals. What's the wellness aspect of it? So on and so forth. But you can see that, whereas LEED, which is the premier green building standard, is focused highly on energy conservation, and they are moving into wellness, but they're primarily into energy conservation. The WELL building standard, focuses a lot more on human health and wellness in the buildings. And then there's the living building challenge, which focuses both on energy consumption, on waste minimization, or these are basically buildings that produce everything more than what they consume. And so there's an holistic aspect on health and wellness as well. So what do we have to do with all of this? I've looked at my career, from a transform to perform perspective, right? So transform is where you set strategies And perform is how do you go about implementing those strategies. What I would ask you to reflect upon, not right now, we will do some reflection, but even long term, is at your center or home or workplace, what are the initiatives that could bring the biggest bang for the buck, right? What 20% of effort is going to reduce your negative impact by 80%, so that you're not running in all directions. So think about that. You also have to inquire about status quo, right? At your workplace, especially. So I have always challenged the status quo, but I won't ask you to do that. Inquire about status quo, right? In our centers, anytime we have talk about solar energy or anything that's sustainable, folks welcome that idea, right? Because you also have to come in with solutions. Just don't ask questions. You also have to come in with solutions. And that's what this community facilitates for us right here. Nothing is beyond reach, believe me. The bigger you think, the better and faster you can go. That's the level of scale jumping we need today. And really, it's possible. It's possible. Nothing is beyond reach. And most importantly, from a Bal Vihar perspective, I think the more we educate our next generation, the better we are going to be facing climate and all of these challenges that we have today. Educate your kids about these issues, and they will make sure that these actions are implemented even at a faster rate than what we have been doing. So now we are going to do some reflection, and I want you to think about what are you going to do next, right? And think big. Really, nothing is out of realm here, but I'll give you a disclaimer that I'm going to come back a year from now and actually ask you for what actions you implemented and what was the outcome. So this is going to be documented, and this is being recorded. So you are on camera and being recorded. So think about what we are going to reflect upon for the next 5 to 10 minutes together. What we want you to do is identify a place, right? It could be your home, it could be workplace, or the Chinmaya Center that you're associated with. And also identify a challenging goal, whether it's procuring renewable energy, whatever that might be, composting, anything. But make it challenging so that we are not taking small steps, but really some bold steps. And we'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that. All right. So 2 minutes are up. Feel free to type in your place and the challenging goal that you've taken up. And we are recording. I'm just kidding. Okay, so it's not that serious. So rezone our air conditioning. Wow. Composting food scraps and measure waste by absolutely. What you measure is what you can reduce. Avoiding new purchases. That's very sattvic. Get energy audit done. Absolutely. That's the first step, right? What you can't measure, you can't do anything about it. Everybody's had a chance to reflect and put their thoughts. All right. So the second action we would like you to think about, identify an action and how do you plan to implement it? So how do you plan to implement it? I think some of you have already gone ahead and mentioned that, but if you need to take a moment to think about what you promised and how would you implement it, think through some of those scenarios for the next couple of minutes. Yeah, I'm loving it. Form a group in our center and start recruiting volunteers. Absolutely. And more importantly, discuss our progress monthly. Yes. Work with the university administration and sustainability organizations. Believe me, they are ripe for change. Universities are. Portland is always ahead. So that's awesome. Yeah, install solar panels. Absolutely. Tulsi ji. Rain barrels at home. Yes. All really good actions. And again, think big, right? If 2 minutes was not enough time, I understand. Think big. I never thought I could afford solar until I went and inquired for my home. And guess what I found out was that it was competitive, compared to what I was paying for my electricity. So why not, right? What used to be beyond reach is within reach because we've given it a thought. We've thought about how to make it happen. And there are organizations that will help us get there. So think big. Yeah, sign up for 100% clean energy. Yeah, those are the kinds of actions, right? This is a small community here right now, but it's going to create big impacts. And that's what we want from you. When you go back to your centers, when you go back to your workplaces, push them hard, ask questions, and you'll see that they'll be willing to listen. Everybody is willing to listen these days. So do that. And with that, I think we can open for any questions that you have of me or for anyone else. And yes, I'm going to come back in a year to ask how you're doing on your goals. So that is something that I'm not going to compromise on. Yeah, I'll make sure that I'll post some of the responses to the team about the questions I see. Which organizations should we contact about solar panels? I'll send some links for you guys to do some, not research, but you can reach out to those organizations and get them to do free assessment, for your property, and all of that is done free. So you just get an estimate. Somebody will come out and do that for you.
Hariom, thank you, Prthvi, for a very informative presentation. I had a question about air filters at home. I know sometimes that's sometimes encouraged to have air filters that filter dust particles. Do you think that actually, does that make a difference to have that in our home, or is it better to just keep the windows open?
So the question is about whether keep windows open or have air filters. Yeah, okay, I can answer that. So absolutely, there is no substitute to clean, fresh air. So anytime you can do that safely, if you're not in an area that's undergoing a wildfire, like in California right now, you can, absolutely. That's the number one way of ventilating your home, the best way. If you can't do that, if you are in a region like Pittsburgh, where it gets cold very soon, yes, an air filter, air purifier can help as well. Just make sure that you do the research. It shouldn't be ozone emitting air purifier. So because ozone emitting will emit ozone in your indoor environment, which means more crap in your space. So you don't want that. You want something that does not emit ozone, but purifies the air. Absolutely, that works really well. Another aspect of this is, look at, if you have newer HVAC systems, you can go a higher rating of the filters that we use. So if that is possible, then you don't need that extra air purifier in your home, and have that extra energy consumption.
Prthvi, thank you for helping me think about buildings. I've literally never almost much thought about buildings before. So one thing that I heard recently, and I haven't looked up enough, this geothermal air conditioners that all go underground, or for heaters, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know more about it, or something to consider?
Yeah.
You've heard about?
Yeah, geothermal is a good option. It depends if you're constructing something new. It's easier to install. If you are retrofitting an existing building, it can get expensive. But again, take a look at the long term, right? If you're going to stay in that building for 15 years, if it's a center, then definitely more than 15 years. Your payback, the recovery of your capital investment might happen well before that 15-year period. So it depends on the project, but it's worth looking into. And assessments are free in most cases. So definitely get that done from a contractor. Can I get a copy of the chat window so I can answer these questions? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if there are no more questions, then thank you for your time. I'm really appreciative of it this time of the day. And if there's any other follow-up questions you would like me to answer, feel free to send me an email and I'll be happy to connect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhruv. If you wouldn't mind, then could you put your email in the chat for others to be able to email? That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. So much to think about. And I think the ideas that everyone has shared in the chat, there's so many wonderful ideas, and will certainly give all of us a way to think about these things a little better. So as far as announcements, so next month our workshop will be on October 23rd. So we'll have our standard workshop from 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, but we'll also have the half-hour work time to sort of incorporate even the ideas from today that was shared in the workshop, as well as those who have already started working on changes in their centers or workplaces, not only homes, but elsewhere also. So thank you everyone for joining. As far as announcements, I think everyone has probably heard of the 3 charities that we're working toward. We're not close to our goal. We're getting there, but we have about 10 days. So during this time of Navratri, we would encourage everyone to think about where they can show their gratitude. In the chat, we have the link to our Gratitude Through Giving page that have links to all 3 of our charities. So please visit that and show your gratitude to all that we've been given. So I do know that Vivekji wanted to share the last few minutes. I'm not sure if they lost connection. Kanchan or Anvita? Oh, okay. Hariom, Vivekji.
Hariom. Thank you very much, Dhruv. That was wonderful in all ways. I'm with our seekers in Portland, and everyone feels the same way. They've challenged themselves to get to net zero here in Portland, and it's possible. I don't even think that this is optional for Portland or for anyone. This is not a matter of being a Samaritan. This is a matter of morality for the future. This Saturday in Niagara Falls, some of us are going to a powwow. A powwow is an Indigenous celebration to remember the past and plan for the future. In Indigenous culture, there is very much an emphasis of 14 generations, or 7 generations in the past and 7 generations in the future. The thought process is that everything that's happening to you right now is because of the efforts, because of the decisions from 7 generations prior. And so whatever we do today, the decisions we make, the actions we take, should be keeping in mind 7 generations from now. Not 7 years, not a generation, but 7 generations. And the way that you've shared this in such a systematic way, again, it's not a matter of I'm a good person, so I'm going to do this. This requires everyone, that this is a matter of adharma and dharma. This is not a choice. And so my final thought relating to what Dhruv shared in terms of thinking big. The most seekers that have joined us for tonight's workshop, as I was sitting there and watching the participants, was 41 plus 18 of us here in Portland. And it was fascinating when Dhruv shared that he thinks he's going to get invited next year for another workshop. And he threatened that whatever is being shared is going to be recorded. One person signed off. And I thought to myself, you know, what he was sharing is so right. And that's the right way to communicate a message. But this idea of this is a choice and I don't want to make this choice, that's not enough. And so You know, us having 60 people in this workshop is not enough. Most of you are part of Chinmaya mission centers. And really from every Chinmaya mission center, there should be 25 seekers joining us. Like here in Portland, where there was 18, now there may be 50. So in your own centers, whether it's Chicago or Fairfield or Tampa, etc., don't just implement the Prthvi Sevasanga guide. I had asked all of you to implement this. I had asked all of you to do more. Spread this also. Spread this guide. Spread this opportunity, because it's not a choice. Just like me sending our children to school is not a choice. If they don't go to school, I'll get in trouble. Sheila and I will face legal consequences. It's not a choice. Us serving the environment, not volunteering for the environment. This I've already spoken about. Us serving the environment used to be a choice, but since the Industrial Revolution, it's no longer a choice. All 8 billion of us, specifically those who have privilege like us, have to serve our environment for the next 7 generations. And this is why Anvita and Kanchan and Rita were speaking about our awe campaign in terms of supporting air, water, earth. We do so much in creating more damage during Navaratri. More plastic, more food, more energy. It's like anti the spirit of Navaratri, when the most tactile Devi we have is Prthvi Devi. So for the next 9 days, dedicate yourself to Prthvi Devi, which means you have to sacrifice. Sacrifice resources, time, and effort so that we can complete this campaign and do more. Every year we have to do more. Here's where I remind everyone to smile. It is an extremely serious matter. I know that, you know that. And so our own sadhana will help us smile and be able to serve better. Again, our gratitude to you, Dhruv, not just for this 1 hour that you've given to us, but you've dedicated your life to what we're all doing for an hour or 8 months. And if more of us can dedicate our lives to the environment, I know Prithvi Devi would smile, because there would be so many Raja Prithus serving her, loving her. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be joy.